Hey everyone, welcome to Book of Katherine, and I am dressed up blingy for a freaking reason. It is for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and marriage and kids. Because apparently we really need to talk about that. I didn't know we needed to talk about it, but apparently we do. Now I may have mentioned this in another video, but I don't know if it's up or not. But we are going to do a full video just on that, because apparently it needs to be done. Now I don't know if anybody else is aware of this. But apparently right now it's okay to get married if you're gay. If you're not gay, it's not okay to get married. What? What? You're scared to get married. You're scared to get married. No, you're not just scared to get married. You're scared to have kids. Okay. So let me just go ahead and just say there is only one reason why you would be scared to, there is not only one reason. I have found out there is a reason, there is only one reason people are scared to get married and have kids. And it's out of peer and family pressure and cultural pressure. There is so much loud screaming from the left, which is communist. Like, the left is not just left, it's communist. That people are actually scared to live out their dream of getting married, having kids. And I can just hear you right now going, well, that's not true. Well, that's not true. Really? If your kids announced to you that they wanted to get married, go out and buy a single family home, you watch those Agenda 21 videos, what did they say about buying a home? What did they say? They said that is no longer the American dream. Didn't they say that? That's what they said. Agenda 21 for the last 25 years has been saying that's no longer. Don't you think your kids are being messaged that? That to go out and get their own home, get their own dream, to start their own family. You don't think it's being messaged to them and being put out there? Oh my goodness, in the colleges, it's actually being taught that you will kill the planet if you have kids. So heck to the yeah, it's happening. Heck to the yes, it's happening. So let me just, for the record, say, go forth and multiply. I don't know what the thing is, but like, go forth and multiply. Like, go forth and have thine kids. They're not stopping, like they say Islamophobia or whatever. They're not stopping those people from having 12 wives and 8 kids each or 22 kids each. They're proud about it in the streets. They're like, we're outnumbering you. And the left isn't saying, hey, Muslims, you shouldn't have, 12 wives and have 1 million kids. If they were really worried about global warming, don't you think that they would start saying something about, multiple wives and 50 million kids would be a problem? It might hurt the planet. No, there's not. Zip, 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 zip. There's nothing being said about that whatsoever. No, cultures all over the planet are just having 1 million babies are just happening. You know what? The one culture that isn't doing that the one culture, let us think. What is the one culture that regulates parents and says, parents and kids, you have to have a license in order to get married. You have to have a license in order to have kids. You have to have a license. You can only have so many kids. And then we even look into your room to say whether or not you can have a boy or a girl. That's China. Communist China. If your family, if your parents, if your sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles are regulating you and telling you that it is wrong in any way, shape, or form to go out there and live your happiness, get with your girl, get with your guy, get with whoever it is that you love and want to make some babies and get some wedding bands on, you tell them to go F themselves. You don't have to say it in actual verbal head, but you say it in your head. You say, go F yourself. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. We have had therapists. You want to know how my husband and I got on our little Plymouth ship and actually took off? Do you know our therapist actually had to say that? Like I think I came from a dry alcoholic system. My husband came from an alcoholic system. Do you want to know what alcoholic systems are? Do you want to know, with all the alcohol that they're pushing on our society, you know why they sell off alcohol? You want to know why they push it? You want to know why they have a pina colada for having a baby, a pina colada for having a baby, and a pina colada for getting off work, and a pina colada for getting a new job, and a pina colada for getting a new college degree, and pina colada for actually being accepted to college, and a pina colada for celebrating Monday, and a Tuesday pina colada, and a Wednesday pina colada, and a Friday pina colada, and it's end of the weekend pina colada, and it's sports day pina colada. Do you want to know why they have a freaking bottle of wine for every freaking day of the week? Do you want to know why that is? Do you have, honestly, any idea how addictive alcohol is? Let me tell you what it does to the family system. We hear about the family system all the time in the Black community. Would you like to know what the alcoholic family system is like? Let me fill you in on a little clue about what the family system like, because, they don't talk about it anymore. You know, before Agenda 21 came along, there was a ton of education in the 80s about the alcoholic system and what it does to the family. They used to have a term they talk about it, the adult alcoholic child. They used to actually, ACOA, they actually had all this research coming out about it. I showed you in my library, the first book I showed you or whatever. They had all this research about what it does to adult children of alcoholics. Oh my gosh, it follows the kid for the rest of their life. But let me tell you what an alcoholic system, let's see if any of you guys recognize what an alcoholic family system looks like. Let's see. Well, there's one person in the family. Maybe it's two. For my husband, there were two. There were two severe alcoholics. But there's always one that it's the most, right? That actually controls the system, right? So there's one, and the entire family unit rotates around this one person. Their entire lives rotate around that person. About that person's emotional needs, functional needs, everything rotates around. And the other kids end up living their lives around that person. If that person picks up a hobby, if that person picks up anytime hobby, this, that, the whole family goes along. And when I even say the whole family, I mean the kids. So if that person gets into, say, dancing, guess what? The kids get into dancing. If that person gets into boxing, the kids get into boxing. And then here's what happens emotionally. Do you know the one person all the kids are not? The one emotion all the kids are not allowed to feel is anger. In an alcoholic family system, anger is never allowed to be felt. But maybe you're wondering, I don't know how we have alcohol in our family. How are we supposed to know if it's being abused or not? You want to know? Let me give you the big picture. Let me tell you how to know. Because we didn't know. I didn't know. I had tons of alcoholics in my life. Never knew it. No one trained me on it. I was a school teacher and they didn't train us on it. I went to UCLA. I went to the entire training. Do you know what they trained us on? They trained us on STDs, how to make sure we didn't get an STD. They didn't give us a frickin' training about alcoholism. Not one thing about how to be prepared for alcoholism. They trained us about every time of sexual intercourse. They made sure we knew what oral intercourse was. They made sure I got an education on anal intercourse. They made sure that was my orientation to UCLA, was all the different sexual positions. That was welcome to UCLA. Here are all the sexual positions. Yeah, nothing about alcoholism. Nothing when I was a teacher's training. No. They didn't do any of that. Nope. Okay, so here is what they did train us on. They trained us on marijuana and things like that, but they didn't train us about alcohol. So I didn't know anything going in. Here are the little signs that no one tells you about, that we had to find out with the freaking expensive counseling and everything like that. But when we found out, we were like, holy freaking cow. Holy freaking cow. You want to know? This is going to blow your freaking minds. Does your family define intimacy not by the quality of time that you spend with them, but by how much time you spend with them? Does your family define intimacy by how much time you spend with them versus the quality of the time? Do they say to you, Well, yeah, you were there for Christmas, but you weren't there every day of the week for the last 6 weeks. Do they always need to be a certain number of distance from their house? When you go out, if you're wondering if you're an alcoholic, let me ask you this. When you leave your home, are you always wondering how far you'll be from that bottle? Or when you leave, are you always thinking in terms of how far I'll be from a place that sells that bottle? I remember from my husband's family, they were like, but she doesn't come over all the time. Like, they were over at my place of business, so I was spending time with them, but I wasn't at their home, the epicenter of the alcohol. So they didn't call it intimacy. Intimacy to an alcoholic system is how much time you spend in the location. Second of all, do they express love through physical gifts and money? Do they give you gifts? Do they buy intimacy? Do they buy favor with gifts instead of like loving you? Do they, instead of seeing you and saying, oh, you like this and I see you, do they just give you stuff? Do they buy you a lot of things in order to like keep you coming back? Are they always giving you money or lending you money in order like a string to keep you hooked? Third, alcoholic systems or alcoholics have a filter. They have a filter. This is a perfect example. So a friend of mine went over to this. I was just like, oh my gosh, she went through it. So she went over to a woman's house and the woman had out like a whole spread. It was this gorgeous spread. And it was all types of drinks there. Like, it was just every type of drink imaginable. All these different kinds of sodas and Perriers and this and that and whatever. And a bar right next to all of these drinks right there. And the woman came up to her and said, you know, what would you like? You know, and just motioned to everything and said, what would you like? And the woman was like, oh, that Perrier looks amazing. I'll take the Perrier. And the woman just like, she said that like she saw her just start vibrating. And the woman was like, what happened? Like, it was like an alarm went off. And the woman like was upset, like she felt like she was no longer a welcome guest in the house. Like she felt like she had crossed the line. That's a filter. What had happened is the woman had not chosen an alcoholic beverage. The filter says, well, because you chose non-alcohol, you're judging me. You're judging that I drink. You're judging that you're saying I have a problem because you didn't choose alcohol. You know, I choose alcohol, you chose non-alcohol. So are you ever in a restaurant and you choose a non-alcoholic beverage and people give you crap? They have a problem. They have a problem. That it does a waiter or waitress when you order something that isn't a beverage and all of a sudden they give you, like they have an attitude towards you, they have a filter. They see it as a judgment of their problem. That's a filter. And they have just drenched our society in it, which is why I know it's so hard for you to leave. Then the fourth thing is that in those families, there is always one. There is always a kid. There's always a kid called the black sheep that family beats the frickin'. They take, because no one's allowed to feel anger. No one in the family is allowed to feel anger. So they use what's called a black sheep and they take all their anger out on that kid. And there was a family online. Do you remember that family online that they all called CPS on? And there was this kid that they would pull the most worst awful things on the kid. Remember, they pull pranks on the kid and the kid would just be like, oh my God. And you just see him wailing and crying. And they'd be like, it was just a joke. It's just the way our family is. But they always pulled it on this kid. They'd punch the kid. They'd do things. They'd knock him around. And you're like, what the heck? This family is like bullying this one kid. Yeah, that's an alcoholic system. And because they don't feel rage, because that's not allowed to be felt, all the rage is taken out on one child in the family. And it's just like ding, 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 ding. That's an alcoholic system. And the thing is that it's like textbook. There are books written on it, just textbook alcoholic family system syndrome. Like it's just outlined. And I remember when my husband and I first went into counseling for marriage counseling. And the thing is it wasn't for us because we were great, but we needed to know how to deal. We wanted to have kids. And one of my therapists when I was younger said, you know, just so you know, when you have kids, your parents are going to have to treat you well. And it always stuck in my head. He's like, your kids are going to have to see your parents treat you with respect. That is an utmost thing for your kids to see. And I remember being like, oh, like that will never happen. Like, oh dear God, right? So when my husband and I finally decided that we were ready to have kids, this is before like I had my first accident, but it was like the upper back and everything. Hello, Tiberius. Do you want to say hello? Oh, no, I can't bend. Oh, I'm not doing well enough. Do you want to try? You want to try? No, I can't. All right. Oh, well. So he walked away. But I think he came to say hello. Let me see. Wow, that was wildly unsuccessful. All right. So where was I? So, yeah, so we went in there and we were like, what can we do about our parents? We're finally ready to have kids. And what do we do about, you know, we had one coming to visit and we're like, so what do we do about this person? Which is hysterical to me now because you can't control another person's behavior. We're like, how do we get this person to treat us respectfully? You know, that doesn't work. Like, how do you get to treat us with respect so that when we have kids, our kids won't be affected? You know, like we were going for counseling to find out how to change another person's behavior. No, you get to change your own behavior and then that's pretty much life. You can choose who you spend time with. The point is, like, don't put your kids around, you know, an abusive adult. Like, if they have poor boundaries, you keep them the frick away. So, he was like, well, okay, what are they like, you know, or whatever. And so we started to explain it. And the guy just goes, okay, so basic alcoholic family system. Now, what's really interesting is that we hadn't said a word about alcohol. Like we mentioned 3 things that were going on about gifts, about they had kept planning visits. They had planned like 6 visits to come up and visit, and then they canceled every time at like the last minute. The last minute they just kept canceling. Tiberius, they just kept canceling at like the last minute, always canceled. And then would send boxes of gifts, like just constantly sent boxes. But it was never new gifts. It was always stuff that they had bought. They would never return things at the store. They just buy these boxes and then just sent it up to us. So there's all this stuff that they just didn't want, you know, and just sent boxes and boxes. Never sent money, just boxes of all this stuff that, you know, they bought and then didn't want to return. So they just sent it to us because, like, I don't know. It was just the weirdest thing. And so we asked, like, okay, these are 3 weird behaviors that were going on. We just list them out. And the guy was just like, okay, basic alcoholic family system. And I remember both my husband and I went, whoa, like, just like, because we had never heard, it was such a shock for us. Like, it was such a shock. Like, and it changed, it reversed our whole world. You know, it had to start, and we actually had to get a new therapist. It changed everything. Because the therapist was like, well, we need to work on you guys. And we're like, no, we want to find out more about this alcohol. And he's like, that's nothing. And we were like, no, seriously, this is what so we actually asked for another. Well, also every time we left that therapist, we came out hearing very different things. And that was very weird for us. For my husband and I, that was the big thing about us, is that we finish each other's sentence. Even now, when we go to doctors, it's so funny. I think we freak the doctors out, but we've been married for so long now that we look at, well, I mean, I guess not compared to other people, but I think we've just been through so much that I'll look over at the doctor, or we'll be in the doctor's office and I'll look over at my husband and I'll just be like, And he'll be like, and I'll turn back and I'll tell her something. Like no words are said. I'll be like, should I say this? And he'll be like, yeah, say that. And I just start speaking to her. That's why I say, like, marry your best friend, like, marry a roommate. It's not about, like, you know, for some people, it won't be about, like, the da-da-da-da. Because a lot of us are broken. Like, a lot of us are broken. Like, the sex comes later and stuff like that. And I'm sorry. It's about survival. And it just makes life so amazing. Life is such an adventure. And if you're just looking for, like, you know, a good CFM moment, there's life in between sex. There's, you know, there's sex and then there's all the life you got to live in between. You better get along real good in between that. So it's just, then it comes later and it's just so amazing. And so, everyone just says you have to look for that first. And I'm like, that's a new concept. It didn't used to, that's not what they used to say to look for. You know what I mean? Anyway, so, I mean, he's handsome as hell and everything like that. Like sometimes we'll be in the store and I'll be like, who's that guy? And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's mine. And I'm just like, oh, I got so good. I got so lucky. But he didn't look like that, you know, in the beginning. I mean, he looked good and everything like that. But I mean, I dressed him. That's the one thing we get to change, lady, is their dress. That's it. Because they hate dressing themselves. They hate dressing themselves. And they much rather have us dress them. And then they get compliments. And they're like, really? Really? And then they love dressing. But that's all. That's all we get to change about them. That's like it. We get to change maybe their hairstyle and their dress. And that's it. They're still going to leave stuff around the floor. Like you get 3 things in the house you get to like, you know, negotiate with them. You pick 3 things that you really care about. You know what I mean? 3 things that you really, really care about, that you really, really just prefer that they change. So you pick 3 things, you know, like if you really care about the toothpaste, fine. That's it. You know, you get 3 things and that's it because they're a guy. They're going to leave clothes on the floor. You know what I mean? So like when we have clothes on the floor, I'm just like, just dump them in this area. Like, can you just do that for me? Just leave them to this area. Like, there's still a guy because there's just so much good that comes from, like, they're so great. I'm sorry, I miss him now. Like, I want to hold him. So they're so great. So, now I want to just sit and be held. So, they're so great. You end up falling in love with that. You know what I mean? Like, I remember when I was younger, you know, you would think that that's a negative thing, but after you live with it and you live with them, you end up seeing it as a cute, you don't think of it as a negative thing. You think of it as a adoration thing. You know, in Good Will Hunting, when he was talking about his wife's farts or whatever, he's like, now that's what I miss about her most. You know, that's what it becomes. So anyway, I'm rambling on about a bunch of stuff. So anyway, we ended up getting another person to that, because when you leave a counselor, you're supposed to hear the same thing, right? So you're supposed to hear the same thing when you come out. And so I actually left on really, really good terms with that counselor, and we just found another counselor. And that actually, but this time we were like, we need counseling for, you know, an alcoholic family system. So we got someone who specialized that. And it was great. Like, it was absolutely wonderful. And we sat down on the couch. We're like, we're having a problem with this. And they were like, oh, and she's the monster and you're this. And we were just like, how'd you know? And we just sped. We sped at such an incredible clip. And we got so much healthier, so much faster. And we really moved at the result of just understanding. And that really is what it comes down to, is understanding the landscape of your family, of like understanding what is your crap and what's their crap and what your codependent is, because it really makes you codependent with that family member. And it really makes you codependent with other people. And children of alcoholics will have a lot of rage. They will really, really have a lot of rage, and it'll influence your marriage. It'll have a big place in your marriage, and because they'll be angry all of a sudden, you won't see it coming. And you'll have to figure that out in your own marriage and things like that. But I will say this, like, there will come a point that when it comes to an alcoholic family system, they will choose the alcohol over you, but they will always, always ask you to be, here's the alcohol, here's them, and they will always have their own life, and it will always revolve around alcohol. They'll always have their own things, but they will always make sure you're in orbit around them. They will always make sure, they'll always want you at the house, they'll always want you to this. So I know a couple right now that they moved for a job, they are driving back to that city like every night or every weekend just to see the parents. The parents are pulling them all the time. And when 2 families get together, and both the parents are alcoholic family systems, the parents get along great and they have all these things, but the kids keep trying to get out of that orbit. And the parents just keep pulling them back in because the parents are getting into retirement age. They start drinking. And I see some of these parents, I've seen some of them because I worked with them in ballroom. And some of these parents do these things where they like won't drink in January or something like that, or won't drink in October because they want to prove to themselves that they are not alcoholics. They want to prove that the alcohol doesn't have control over them. Nope. Once you feel like you have to do that, that's it. Alcohol will control over you. And this is where I love Jonathan Van Ness. Abstinence is the only way. Abstinence is the only way. Now, I have an addiction. There's an addiction I've had to get over. My husband has an addiction he's had to get over. It's something our society has probably, like, there's so many people who have to go through it. Like, there's so many people. So there is, and I've worked with so many people at this point. I've come into so many people's lives, whether I've worked through it through dancing, I end up running into it, or whether I run through my consulting, or whether I run into my teaching, I end up running into people and I counsel them through the addictions, and I help them get into like groups, and whether there's, if you're addicted to, pornography, there's love and family addiction and things like that. It's like called love addiction. There's anonymous groups for that. It's hard because you do it online and a lot of people still participate in it. They'll still have like girlfriends and stuff like that. And it's very easy to lie online. You really have to be in person. You have to have somebody who's keeping you accountable in person. It's almost impossible to stay sober if you're just staying in, online. And if someone speeds through the 12 steps, bull. Like, no one speeds through the 12 steps. Addiction's hard. Now, if you catch it early, like catch it early or whatever, but it's still freaking hard. Like, my addiction, the only way I got over my addiction, which it was really, really hard, is so, so powerful. But I had to do a thing where I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice in every single minute. Like, every single minute I had to like pull, like be like in that minute. I couldn't think about the next 12 minutes or the next 20 minutes or the next 30 minutes or the next hour. I had to think about that minute and my choice in that moment. I couldn't worry about how many choices I had to make in the future. I had to worry in that moment. And I was like, when I had the pull, I had to decide in that moment, do I want it now or not? And I'd be like, all I have power over is that moment. And I have to choose no. And I would choose no in that moment. And then I'd be like, I wouldn't think about anything in the future. That was the technique that I used. And I never worried about the future. The moment you worry about the future and all the decisions you have to make no in the future, you're done. It'll never happen. And that's the way I defeated it, because I only ever worried about the decision I had to make in the moment. And suddenly it doesn't become that much, because only in the moment, it's not a lot of time to worry about it. It only has to worry about this. And it suddenly becomes a small moment, because that moment just keeps repeating itself. It's not a very long period of time. And it becomes a very short moment, and you get in that moment and it just comes, and I would just walk. I'd get up physically and I'd walk. I'd just walk somewhere else. I'd walk until it was gone, and do something else or whatever till it was gone. And then I just wouldn't worry about it until it came again. And I'd have to walk until it was gone. And that's the way I had to do mine. And then next thing you knew, the intervals became longer and longer until the impulse, came again. But the impulses come back, every once in a while. And then I have to make that decision again in that moment. But it's gotten easier and easier, but still in the moment, it's still that moment. And I don't worry ever about the future. But it's a very, alcoholic systems are powerful. But I will tell you this, like, when you go and get clean, you cannot just go back into your family system and think you're going to be sober. You have got to get on the Plymouth, and you gotta get on the Mayflower and sail away and get into a new system. You know what works now. You got to get away, because once you get back in the city, it's like that girl that left the take me outside or whatever, snatch you outside. I can't remember it or whatever. She went right back to her mom, and she just went right back into it. She looked so healthy on that ranch, didn't she? I think it's funny that, all the left people, like, their kids got all into trouble from living a left lifestyle, communist lifestyle. They get all sick, and then they send them to Republican camps. I think that's hysterical to get sober. I was like, very interesting. They send them to conservative states in order to get healthy. Isn't that interesting? I was commenting that to my husband. When I was doing sanctuary states, I was looking at all the states, and I was like, wait, those are the states that are, wait a minute, they're sending them to like Mormon states to get sober. interesting. Not that like Mormon, you know. So anyway, so I want you to think about those things. If your family or loved ones are telling you not to get married, not to have kids. Oh, that's what I was going to say. One of our therapists eventually, not that guy, but one of them that he took us to, the final step was there was this really bad thing that my husband was having a really hard time getting over. Like his family we had moved away from his family, but his family would just, every time he was trying to make a decision that was good for himself, his family would just get in his head. There would be like this circle in his head of like a family meeting telling him no, telling him shame on you for doing that. And he was like, you're just going to have to tell them to F themselves. Like you're just going to say F you in your head. And because anger wasn't allowed in the family, and F you is an expression of anger. And when you're not used to feeling it, you have to start feeling it because it's something healthy. It was something built in it. We have a number of emotions. If you look at that Plechnik's wheel of emotions, there's a bunch of different emotions. In order to be healthy, you have to be able to feel all of them in a healthy way, in a nice, balanced way. If you're not feeling one of them at any point in time, you know. So I know there is a speaker out there that says anger is a bad thing, but I think he's a controlled anger. And he does say, if you actually break it down with him, like if you hear him talk about it more, he's not saying all anger. He's saying like the way it's used. You know, there's out of control anger and if it explodes and all these sorts of things. It's not anger itself. You know what I mean? Like there's types, there's all these different varieties of anger. And that's the point, is that it's very unhealthy with the way alcoholic systems use anger. And you have to stand up for yourself. Anger is supposed to be our technique of telling us something's wrong. When you're in a situation, if you're feeling healthy anger and you go somewhere and you feel anger, it's supposed to tell you, that's our internal warning system to tell us that our boundaries have been violated, that someone wronged you, right? Like that book, Boundaries, that's why I said it's good. I know it's a faith-based book, but if you can get past the faith-based of it and just get to the nitty-gritty of it, if someone could tell me a book out there in psychology that tells you the same stuff without faith, please send it to me because it's needed. It's so needed. The things of like saying like, we have boundaries, we have emotional boundaries that says this is my space and that's your space. Now, cultures do it. Like some of my best therapists, they didn't, you know, practice biblical abuse or whatever, but they all taught it. They're like, look, they feel I can get into it anyway. So this is just what I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk to you about go out, have your babies, and say those words if your family's like, no, you shouldn't do this. And this is the argument you can give them. Okay, these are really starting to hurt, so I'm going to have to take them off. So I'm starting to get in pain. So I tried it. That's why I don't wear all this stuff, because I get in a lot of pain. So I wish I could. So this is what I wanted to say to you about an argument that you can give them. Okay? Just say, you know, when you were growing up, didn't you really hate the church and the do-gooders and like all the, like, isn't that what you hated, was people who told you you couldn't live the way you wanted to live? Like, isn't that like what you rallied against? Isn't that what you marched against? Didn't you march against people who told you you couldn't live the way that you wanted to live? Like, isn't that what you hated? Like, you know, being told you had to live one way. Isn't that what you hated? You know what I mean? Like being locked down. And if that doesn't work, just say, you know, you had your life, you lived your life way, and you had me. Do you regret that? Is that what you're saying? Do you regret having me? I want to have me. Like, I want to have one of me. Why did you get to? Why you and not me? Of course, you know, my number one thing is if they're acting like that, don't engage with them. I wouldn't even have them at the wedding. When you have family like that, go get married on your own. Have a wedding for yourself. I think I said that in one of my things. I was like, I really wish we just gotten married on our own and had our own thing. I really wish we had. So, and then, because sometimes there's just no arguing with them. But you could I just know there's so much free land out there, and I don't know, they're just not worth your time. People like that are not worth your time, because they sure do have rules for the way everybody else is supposed to live, but they sure don't live by those rules themselves. You know, you have to think of them as the Puritans of the 16. They're the na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. They sure, they're like communist China. They're not like true Americans. They're not live free or die at all. They're not like, I think that live free or die is the Walter White thing. He had that on his license. No, he didn't have that. New Hampshire has that on their license plate. But I don't know where it's from, right? One of the founders said that or something, live free or die. And that's the thing, is that the British did that. So they're just being elites and communists when they do that. And you just have to say a few in your head because it's what you want to do. And we still live in America. And while you can, go do it and populate the earth, because, you can't ask them, be like, then why is Islam allowed to do it? Why do they get to and not me? Like, why? Why is it okay for them to do it and not me? I don't get it. Like, why? There's just a lot of questions that you can ask. But mostly I want to give you the freedom to go and do it because, and also tell you that there are plenty of communities that are looking for that. Like, I know when my husband and I go around, there are so many old people, like we go into hospitals, where we live out in the country, so many people are just like, young people, they always smile at us. When we walk around holding hands, people smile at us. We're not in the big city, but people love seeing us together. Like, I can tell you that. And I will say that when we were trapped in our parents' circle, we look back at photos. We look back at photos of the first, few years together, and they're all with our families. Like, that's a sign of an alcoholic system. If all the photos are just family photos for vacation, if that's where you go is back home for vacation, for every time off, it's always back to the family. That's not normal. That's not normal. You're supposed to have other friends outside. That's not normal. We didn't used to live that way. We used to go off and have our own lives and have friends. We made other friends in other communities. I didn't even grow up that way. Like, my parents moved, their families were in other parts of the country completely. They left, they went to the other side of the country. They had their own families, and I grew up with like dozens of other families around us, and we grew up with their kids. That used to be the American life. And by the way, they were all different nationalities too, come to think of it. We used to mix and mingle. God, I used to think some of them were really hot too. Like, I was just like dreaming about marrying them and stuff like that. Like, it used to be a very different America. So just because we have the left and these billionaires paying this stuff and your parents have fallen for it, your brothers and sisters have fallen for it, doesn't mean you have to be a chump. Like, get on out there. And it has nothing to do with POTUS. It has nothing to do with POTUS at all. It has to do with you and your happiness. And you go on and get it. You have children that you haven't met yet. And by the way, my husband and I didn't get to have them. My internals are so messed up. They're so messed up that it's beyond. Like, we finally met with a doctor a couple of years ago, and they were just like, it's over. Like, don't you dare let someone else's attitude take that from you. I think I'm too upset now. Like, I could never imagine letting some fear of someone's attitude. If it's that bad, it is time to jump ship. It is time to jump ship. And you can do it in the middle of the night. You can get new phones. You can disconnect. Do you know the hardest thing for us to do was get rid of all the little money ties that they had to us? Pay off all the little loans, get all the phones disconnected, get all that. That was the hardest thing. It was like a spider web, trying to get it all disconnected, to get it all off of us. But with every cut, it's like being like, just baptized or something. I don't know with that, what is it? What are the words? What are the words? Like fresh, the green bars of soap when you're in that shower. Those shower commercials with the green. What do you want to call it? Whatever. You guys know what I mean. Like crystals. Superman. Like in the movie Superman, when they went down and there's all those crystals, and it came up and the crystals came up, that feeling of just like bright, glowy, just like all this stuff being birthed, like new earth. That's what it feels like. And you can get that, but you have to ditch the lead weight that's just tied to communist China. If they want to live there, freaking go let them live there. But right now, there's free land in the middle of America. Towns are handing out free land. You know what the best part about free land is? The best part about free land, the best part about living out in the country, oh my God, let me tell you what the best part is. No water bill. No water bill. They have wells. Wells. The water's clean. Tastes better than anything you'll get on a water system. OMG. Oh, number two, there's no sewer bill. Oh, they have these things called leach fields. Have you ever heard of a leach field? We had it. We were like, what in the heck is that? Nope. No sewer bill. Nope. Leach field. Craziest thing we ever saw. We thought we were on planet Mars. Didn't know what leach fields were. Had to learn. You're going to think they're gross. But it's normal out in the country. And by the way, from what we've seen on the maps and everything like that, yeah, all the places remember when I said I started driving up, we started driving on our adventures, we started driving up the Underground Railroad and everything like that, like we've started driving up them. We started driving up all the things, like we go past the hospitals and stuff like that. That's where all the DC elite go and everything like that. That's where all the DC elite and stuff, they all have leach fields up there. So all the DC elite live with the leach fields too. So I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to hear it. They all have the same thing. So it's not so, So I think it's just all from what I've seen in my travels, I'm starting to realize now it's like Florida all the way up to Maine. It's a normal, well, maybe you guys don't think it's so weird. It was weird for us being from California. We'd never heard of a leach field. So, oh well. Maybe everyone's going, well, duh, what are leach fields? So, but no sewer bill. All right. So, then the other thing is, the best part about it is you don't have a neighbor looking through your window. Like when when I'm looking, like I remember when I started in California, when I was looking at a place to live, all I wanted to look at was like, how close is the neighbor's window? Like, when you look at the pictures, I'd be like, well, can I see somebody's home through the window? There are $1 million mansions with a home right there. Not out in the country. You can't see the neighbor's home. You need binoculars. You know how quiet that is? So maybe they have a barking dog, but it's like, woo, woo, woo. Leave. Escape in the middle of the night if you have to, because it is a form of slavery. It absolutely is. All right, I've talked forever, and I'm hurting. I love you guys. I love you so much. Have fun getting married and having babies. Can't believe they gave gay rights. They said, go get married. And then the rest of you aren't allowed to. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever said. Like, let's do it. Let's get it on. Let's get it on. Let's get the rings on the finger and everything like that. Let's get the rings on the fingers. Let's get the marriage. And you know what? It's actually a form of oppression that we have to get a marriage license. Like, that's something China did. We got that from China. Did you know that? We got that from China. We used to be able to get married without a legal license. I think that's ridiculous. I didn't realize that before. That's something we got from China. Mama. So, anyway, just go get married. Just go get married. It's amazing. And it's for you. And they're not going to be mad at you forever. It's their life. It's not yours. I'm going to repeat it forever and ever. It really upset me when I found it out. So it really, really upset me. And I just know, I know for so many of you that you're shocked when you're hearing this. And I want you to think about whether or not you participated in that, how much you participated in it, in the fear-mongering over marriage and kids. You know, and see if you can reverse it. Oh, and there's a really great book on getting married that will save you a lot of money. Oprah recommended it back in the day. But it's tall and it's skinny and it'll save you a ton of money. It's this tall, skinny book and it's really thick. But don't go to the wedding magazines. They're all paid. It's all astroturfing. Like that's the ultimate astroturf. It's astroturfing before there was anything else. But it's this tall, it's like the Bridal Guide or something like that. It's tall and it's skinny. That's the one you want to get. That's the one. you know, because they were, I'll never forget it. They were the ones that said, if you get a bridal dress, you know, if you get a gown that's not for a wedding, and they said, and you get it lined, a lined dress with a gorgeous, if you get a silk dress that's lined, it'll be like $200, $250, you get a silk dress that's lined. But if you get that for a wedding, it'll be $10,000. You can't get a silk dress that's lined for like less than like $5,000 to $10,000. They're like, it's completely, you know, whatever. So they were smart. I went and had mine made, like handmade. So, you know, I got a silk gown for $600. You know, had it designed, had it made, you know, I just went to a quinceañera place. Had gorgeous gown. Had my whole big, you know, gorgeous. It was like bomb with the most amazing silk, the most stunning silk you've ever seen. It was absolutely stunning. Stunning, stunning, stunning. Stunning. You know what I mean? I got to design the length of the, you know, the whole thing. Like I got to have a massive veil, the whole 9 yards. I got to have the whole thing. I didn't pay the price tag. Do you know what that would have been in a wedding gown shop? Do you know what that would have been? You know, and I read them. It even gives like what they really are, like how bad the dresses are, like what percentage of people get bad orders. And I told my mom, I said, look, if you order from this store, this is what the percent chance is that you're going to get something that's sewn wrong. And she's like, no, I'm going to order from it instead. I'm going to order from it instead. So she did, and she got her zipper, and her zipper arrived like this. And she had to pay to have it fixed. And I was just like, yep, there we go. So I followed the book. I did exactly what the book said. So I had what I needed. You know what I mean? Like and before that guy did that thing that cut out all the flowers, that book was recommending how to cut out the flowers. And I got the invitations I wanted, all the gorgeous, like I had the high-end wedding without ever paying the high-end prices, because I have expensive taste. Like if you haven't noticed. Like I have such boss taste. We went into what was it? We were at the hospital the other day, and I was like, oh, let's go check out that store because it had like good AC or whatever. And I was like, oh, let's go see that rack. You know, it was like, you know, the $1,100 coat on the rack, the only one. And I was like, yeah, dream. So I'll stick with my vintage stores and my pretty $1.50 fan, right? You know what I mean? But I mean, that's my taste. And so I had it all, I just had it all, but I got everything I wanted. I got everything I wanted that you will see, you know, but you'll get it in there. But I got it for like, if I had gotten the cheapest stuff, it would have been. So just go have the wedding of your dreams. Go have it for a price that you can afford. You know, I'm giving you all this stuff. So please donate. Please donate so I can afford the doctor's visit I'm about to go on, because it's going to be hell of expensive because you guys are all booking up the wedding venues. Thank you very much. So now we have to get a really expensive hotel. So could you please donate down below so I can afford the hotel? So donation down below. I would really, really, really appreciate it. That would be really, really helpful, because I just probably saved you about $10,000 to $25,000 on your wedding. That would be really helpful. All right. I love you guys so much. Bye. Peace out. Bye. And I probably got you some grandkids too. You'll end up loving me for that.